Good evening, TC. I'm very well, thank you. How are you? I was saying that you had a very, very long day of non-stop talking. How are you? Like
Yeah,
you?
today's been crazy. We started out at what, 4 a.m. And in fact, I was talking to my sister-in-law just before this, and I said I started out at 4 a.m. And we prayed till about 4:45, and then we went into the meditation room till about 6:15. And immediately after that, I stepped out and I went on my early morning brisk walk for 90 minutes. I came in about 7:30, 7:40, and then I did the 5 minutes earthing and grounding, and I shot that video to post, and then I went to take a bath, and then I got ready. I had breakfast, and then I came into class at 8:30 a.m. And I ran that class till 6 p.m. And then I took about an hour to rest. And then at 7 p.m., we had a purpose-driven life that we finished just around past 8. And then I gisted with my sister-in-law, and my sister. My wife is in Abuja. I called her, then we gisted. And then we're here, back here. Wow, what a day, right?
Wow.
And that's how my day's been. That's how my day's been every day since Friday. Yeah, since Friday. That's how it's been for me every day. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so tonight, I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves. So ID, introduce yourself, and then Banke, you'd introduce yourself, and then we're gonna get straight into this conversation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, TC, and thank you for all you do. We really appreciate you. So my name is Idon Peter. Many people know me as ID. I'm the executive assistant to the Catalyst. So I work with him to transform lives by transforming mind. Aside from that, I'm a certified integrative life coach from the OLCA Coaching Academy. So I pass the mic to you, Banke.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm Banke Shotomi. I am a senior consultant, a facilitator, and executive leadership coach by day. I then run a platform called the Mega Woman Community, which is a platform that is focused on helping women to lead in their lives, in their workplaces, from a place of feminine ease and grace, utilizing and leveraging their feminine energy. And I'm also a certified coach from the OLCA institution, and really excited about the conversations we're going to have today.
Awesome stuff. So thank you very much, ladies. Let's get cracking. So who's gonna take it up? Who's gonna start off? Who's gonna put me on the hot seat first?
That's me.
Okay, let's do this.
All right, sir. Learning from past mistakes for future success. Very interesting because we've all have mistakes. We've all made mistakes in so many ways, and of course everybody wants to be successful. And it's the beginning of the year, and is our series on new beginning for January. And I remember the last time we had Clubhouse before we closed for the year, you had talked about pause and that we should pause to reflect on how the year went, what we learned, what were our mistakes, failures and all that. But I'm wondering, how can a person effectively reflect on a past mistake without being trapped in two ways, dwelling on them or being overwhelmed by the shame and the guilt by that these past mistakes bring, because you can go into that reflective mode to go and learn the lessons, and then you get trapped by just dwelling and regretting and feeling shame. So what's effective way of reflecting on these past mistakes for future success?
Wow, that's a very deep question, and let me start off by quoting John Powell. He says that the only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing.
Mhm.
Mm. the only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing. You know, the Bible says that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And we all know that perception is everything. Oh yeah, the way we see the problem is the problem. So in answering your question, how do I not get overwhelmed? How do I not dwell on the shame and the regret? Is based on how you see failure, how you see mistakes. So I define failure and as first attempt in learning. So do you know anyone in the world that has achieved anything phenomenal, that achieved it at their first attempt? No one. So if you begin to define mistakes, if you begin to define failure as an opportunity to learn, right, then, you know, it changes the equation. If you begin to look at mistakes and failures, not as an end result, but as stepping stones for your progress and your and your growth, it changes the color. If you begin to look at mistakes and failure as feedback, that provide you with insight on what you need to go and improve, what you need to work on, and what works and what doesn't work, so that you can be flexible and adaptable enough to change what you're doing, then it doesn't seem like what people think it is. Now, if you look at mistakes and failure as having purpose, as creating opportunities that serve your self-improvement, your resilience, and your strategic growth, then it's colored completely different. And so it's the people that, you know, label mistakes and failure as something bad that get overwhelmed by it. You see, I've stopped seeing anything as bad as good. I've started seeing everything as an opportunity to learn, to progress, and to grow. No matter whether it's good, bad, or ugly. And I also throw mistakes and I also throw failures into that into that bouquet. I've worked with, you know, some of the world's most successful people, whether it's in entrepreneurship, whether it's in, you know, as executives that run organizations, whether it's in entertainment, whether it's in music, whether it's in all spheres of life, right? And I've come to accept that the greatest teacher is not success. The greatest teacher is failure. The greatest teacher is not achieving an achievement. The greatest teacher is mistakes. Because when you achieve, when you succeed, there's nothing you can grow in as much. But when you fail and you make mistakes, especially if you see it as an opportunity for progress, for learning and growth, then it expands you. It makes you turn out to be a much better person and makes you turn out to be a bigger person. So for me, it's about perspective. For me, it's about your mindset. For me, it's about the definition. For me, it's about the meaning that you give mistakes and the meaning that you give failure. I yield the mic.
Thank you.
No,
yeah.
it's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tisa. I love that statement. The greatest teacher is not success, it's failure. And I learned this quite some time back, that failure is always feedback. It's always giving you some kind of messaging on how to improve, how to tweak. And so I guess my question is, we know that actually failure isn't a bad thing. So societally, we've been made to feel like failure is bad. But with what you've just said, you've given us a positive spin on how we can embrace failure. So I guess my question that I want to ask you is, knowing that failure actually is a criteria for you to become successful, what do you think are some of the barriers that people have that prevents them from moving past regret, right? So regret is one of those spaces in our lives where something doesn't go right, we fail in quotes, and we go over and over and over that experience and we regret it. What is it that causes us to stay in that loop such that we don't get to see this statement that you've said here, which is the greatest teacher is actually in fact failure? What causes us to stay stuck in our regrets?
You know, we're all products of influence. Yeah, Banke, thank you very much for that question. You know, we're all products of influence. And the family that we grew up in, the community that we belong to, and the things that we are learning influence our thinking, our perception, our belief system, and our emotions. And the more we hear, the more we are programmed to believe. And based on the community or the prevailing lessons in those communities, we develop beliefs. And beliefs rule our world. Your beliefs inform your emotions, and your emotions inform your decisions, and your decisions, you know, they inform your behavior, your habitual behaviors. And so by virtue of the environment you find yourself in and the community and the people within there and the messaging, you are infected and affected by the conversations in there and the information in there. And if you take on that information, you think about it, you process it, and you agree with it, it becomes a belief system. And your belief system invariably will inform your emotions. And if the narrative about mistakes, if the narrative about failure is negative, if the narrative about mistakes, if the narrative about failure is suffering, if the narrative about failure, if the narrative about mistakes is trauma, right? We are positioning you to believe that it's negative. We're positioning you to feel and to hold on to negative, limiting, disempowering beliefs and emotions. Most definitely, right? You'll be thinking and making decisions that are negative, limiting, and disempowering. And you will form negative, limiting, disempowering habits and behaviors, which will inform your outcomes or your results in life. And so you are conformed, you are programmed by virtue of the information, the meaning you give to it, the beliefs that you develop by it, the emotions that you hold, the decisions you make, and your own habitual behavior. So it becomes a cycle, and then you pay it forward, right? And every time you make a decision, and by virtue of your routines or your habits, it creates outcomes. It validates that belief. And so you're going through cycles of someone has implanted a concept that has borne fruits, and you are seeing the fruits. So you now begin to recycle it again, and by confirmation bias, you validate that belief, that validates that emotion, that validates that behavior, that validates another outcome. And so 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 20 years of your life, that's the cycle of your life. And you are being conformed to the system of that environment. What you need is for your mind to be transformed. It's almost like your system is working, but it's working with a virus. It's almost like your phone has a virus in it, or your laptop has a virus in it. And what if you impute some things in it, it doesn't give you the results that you want. So what do you need to do? You need to install an antivirus that helps correct it, eliminate the virus, right, reprograms the operating system so that it begins to work optimally. So you need an intervention. You need to introduce new information that is contrary to that old information, that give you new meaning, and by virtue of that, you develop new beliefs, and by virtue of that, new emotions, new decisions, new habitual behaviors, and new outcomes. And that begin to validate, and then you go through that cycle again. And that's how you exit the negative, limiting, disempowering loop. And you develop a program that brings you into a positive loop. I yield the mic.
Thank you very much, TC, because I was even about asking the question, how do you sort of recognize the reoccurring patterns? Because there are some people that will keep saying, why is this always happening to me? Why is this always happening to me? So that means they're running a certain reoccurring pattern of behavior. But then I want to ask this question because some people, when they make mistakes, they can't learn from it, especially when they're working in a team, like in an office setting. They can't learn from the mistakes and grow from the mistake because of the fear of judgment. So some boss are very, very, should I say, judgmental of people that make mistakes. So as a boss, as a leader, how do you create an environment where members can learn from their mistakes without that fear of being judged?
Thank you very much for that question, ID. It's interesting because, as a leader, you have to realize that your role is to provide strategic direction, motivation, to create the right environment for your staff, for your people to prosper, for your people to make mistakes, for your people to grow, and for your people to perform. And there is no consistent performance without growth. There is no growth without mistakes and failures. In fact, there is no creativity in an environment where you do not encourage failure or mistakes. Okay, so that speaks to style of leadership. And every leader, right, needs to understand that you are only a leader because you have followers. So followers make you a leader. It's not positional. It's about working with people. It's about being the arrowhead. It's about leading people to achieve a common vision, mission, objective. And once you define leadership from that perspective, you realize that you are not a leader outside of the people that you lead. And you cannot achieve your vision and your mission outside of the support system or the team that you have built, which means that you recognize that your success and your productivity, your performance or your profitability as a leader or as the leader of that organization hinges on the productivity, the performance, and the profitability of the people that work with you. So the very first thing that the leader needs to do is to create an environment where people feel comfortable to make mistakes and to fail. However, you must also create an environment where people learn from their mistakes, people grow from their mistakes, and people don't make the same mistakes again. Now, if you, however, find that within your system, where you have created a psychological and emotional safe environment where you are fostering creativity and innovation, you are allowing people to find expression and to give their very best and to make mistakes and to fail, you have one or two people that keep making those same mistakes, you keep giving them room to learn. You create an atmosphere where you put another system in place where you coach them, and they still make those mistakes, right? Then you have to now go to the next stage, which is the stage of, ensuring that they realize that there are consequences for continuing to make the same mistakes, continuing to fail, and not learning from it. So in a typical organization, you would have HR give them a query. And then the query states the reason why they're not performing, why they're not productive. And then you put in place a program to support them. So you get a coach to work with them. Now, it's either they are willing or they are not willing. Now, what you're beginning to do is to, beyond what you see, once you get that external coach to work with them, then the external coach will give you a report and say, this one has changed, or this one, has an attitude to learn and to change. And this one now begins the journey towards change. Or this one, there's no hope. We have tried A, B, C, D. Let us see in the next 3 months what the output will be. And then the coach continues to support that person, right? And then in 3 months, you do an assessment again, and you realize this person is still at the same place. So the leader has to make a very, very, very tough decision, because that person has now become deadwood. And so the leader has to move that person on. If not, it's going to create a culture where everybody else sees that, this person is not growing or learning, and then begins to also see it as the norm. And before it becomes the culture in the organization, you have to prune. You become, a gardener that prunes the vine so that there can be fruitfulness. I mean, leaders have to play. They have to learn that delicate dance between empathy, compassion, understanding, and bringing down the knife. And that's the role of a leader, and that's how you do it. I yield the mic.
Thank you, TC. I really love the corporate context or the work context, because I think it is important. I mean, I do a lot of work with organizations. So one of the key things that come up is psychological safety. And you've kind of spoken to that to help you move past mistakes in the work context, it's important that your workplace feels psychologically safe to make those mistakes. And that you have a leader who understands that we're all human and we make mistakes, and life continues. My question is bringing it back again to the individual, okay? And I use the example of a few months ago. I made a really bad financial decision. Like, I spent on something that I shouldn't have, and it had an implication on other really important things. And in that moment, it was a massive regret. I remember feeling that sense of, oh my gosh, why did I do this? I felt so bad. And the feeling of regret really, I couldn't shake it off. I kept on judging myself. I kept on, telling myself, how could you have done it with all that you know? What were you thinking? How does someone practically deal with the emotional, prison that regret can sometimes capture you in? And this is me, obviously a coach under your mentorship, Of course, I should know all of these things, but it happens because we're all human beings. But imagine someone who doesn't have the tools that we have, that we've learned from you. How do they manage that sense of regret, that emotion? And how do they break out of the cage that sometimes regret can really put you into and impact the rest of the way in which you live?
Thank you very much, Banke. This is when you understand the value of emotional resilience. And especially today, because the world of work is completely changed, and we're learning on the job, as we go. Every day a new app comes out, every day new software comes out, every day there's something new. You have to develop emotional resilience, because the fear of failure, the regret of failure, the shame of failure is real, and it can paralyze you and paralyze progress. And so emotional resilience is what you need to develop to help you recover, to bounce back and move forward. And you've got to be able to practice mindfulness to manage your emotions or to master your emotions. And you've got to be able to use failure as an opportunity to strengthen your mental toughness. So imagine an athlete, or that often use athletes that often use past losses as motivation to train harder and improve their performance. So do you need to do. We've seen, time and time again, athletes that have injuries, athletes that, Michael Jordan they've given him the last shot to take and he's missed it. And the whole year hinges on that moment. We've seen footballers, being given the last opportunity to take a penalty kick that will make their team win the World Cup, and they lose. But guess what these athletes do? These athletes, they develop emotional resilience. And what they do is they immediately begin to work with psychologists and coaches to turn that failure, that loss, into motivation to drive themselves harder, to train harder, and to improve their performance. And so it is very, very important for us to get that. It is more of a mindset issue. If you have a fixed mindset, it leads to stagnation. If you have a growth mindset, it fosters continuous improvement. So you've got to do an audit and ask yourself, what is my mindset? The person that consistently holds on to regret and shame when they fail and they make mistakes is one who is harboring a fixed mindset or a set mindset. Because someone that has a growth mindset understands that failure is inevitable. Mistakes are inevitable. They are very critical and real aspects of life. Have you ever met anyone that's never failed? Have you ever met anyone that's never made mistakes? A growth mindset encourages you to embrace failure and mistakes as part of life. We talk about the universal laws of the universe, and we talk about the law of duality. And the law of duality tells us that there's an opposite to everything. There's a shadow everywhere that light shines. So if light shines on an object, no matter how bright that light is, it will cast a shadow. So there's a shadow to everything. And in life, that's not an exception. We've got to embrace the reality of the duality of life. There will always be setbacks. There will always be, great times. There will always be highs. There will always be lows. There will always be white. There will always be black. There will always be light. There will always be darkness. There will always be happy times and sad times. There will always be successful times and times when you fail. And so You've got to embrace life because that is life. You cannot escape it. You know, it's like, you know, one of the things that blows my mind the most is when people are still freaking out and reacting to the norms of life. I mean, imagine freaking out that the sun has come out in the morning. Imagine freaking out that the sun is set at night and the moon is coming out. You freak out today, tomorrow you freak out. The day after you freak out, then there's something wrong with you. I mean, imagine you call my name Larry and I start to react. Oh my God, what's that? What's that? Then you will look at me and say to me, this guy needs to go to the asylum. They need to check him into a mental institution. There's something definitely wrong with this guy. If you are reacting to the norms of life and you do not understand how to accept the norms of life, then you're not socially intelligent. You're not emotionally intelligent. You're not even spiritually intelligent. You need to check into an institution that will reprogram you, help you unlearn and relearn. So, because, you know, it is the reality of life. And you've got to learn how to accept it, how to develop social resilience, emotional resilience, mental resilience, spiritual resilience. I yield the mic.
Wow, thank you so much, TC. It's a norm of life. That's really interesting when you say that, you know, that's just the norm, you know, and we just got to accept it. So I'm going to move over to the lessons now because we dwell on the mistakes. So as a coach, what techniques, what tools do you recommend for someone to use to extract the lessons from the mistakes of life?
Ooh, that's a big one. You know, I think the very first thing you need to
Can't
do.
hear you, TC.
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't put on my mic. I think the very first thing that you need to do is to acknowledge and accept the mistake. Acceptance and acknowledgement and not judgment. So you give it unconditional acceptance and you acknowledge the mistake. And this really matters. And the reason why it matters is because denial and blame shifting prevents growth. Acceptance, right, is the first step towards progress and improvement. And how do you acknowledge and accept? You have to reflect objectively on what went wrong and your own contribution towards it. You know, there's some people that they are kings of blaming other people for themselves. They are kings of pointing fingers, but never take responsibility. You've got to reflect objectively on what went wrong. You've got to avoid self-criticism. And you have to focus on what failed. This is so important. You have to focus on what failed, not who failed. If you shift your focus on what failed rather than who failed, then you'll be able to detach yourself and you'll be able to reflect objectively. Let me give you a classic example. Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison failed 10,475 times. 10,475 times. This gentleman was looking to create the filament bulb. He tried the first time, he failed. He tried the second time, he failed. He tried the 1,000th time, he failed. He tried the 2,000, 5,000, 9,000, 10,000th time. He tried the 10,475th time before he got it right. Now, in between those 10,000 failures, his laboratory got burnt. It burnt down. And his son watched him watch all his. Now, this guy has the highest number of patents in the world. He was creating and inventing things along the path of the 10,000 trials, but he was not inventing what he wanted to invent. So he wasn't outrightly failing. He was failing to create what he wanted to create, but he was creating other things that he had gotten the patent for. Now, all of those things went up in flames. Everything that he had worked for went down in flames that night. And Thomas Edison crouched in a corner, watching every single thing burn. And his son was worried, ran to his mother and said, "Dad is going cuckoo." And so they rushed to Thomas Edison and told him to leave. How can you be watching your entire lifetime's work? And this was about age 60. How could you be watching your entire lifetime's work go down in flames? Guess what Thomas Edison said? He said to them, "Thank God all my mistakes are burnt down. I have an opportunity to start all over again tomorrow, afresh." And then they interviewed him. Why would you continue after you had failed 10,000 times? He said, "I didn't fail 10,000 times. I learned 10,000 ways not to do it." I learned 10,000 ways how it wouldn't work. So the question is this: what do you see? When anything goes wrong, you must always return to the fundamental principles and ask yourself, what else can I do? Now, a lot of people don't ask themselves those questions because they see that they have failed. They don't see that it's what they've attempted that has failed. If you see and you look at what it is that you've attempted to do, and if that what is does not deliver for you, then you can ask yourself what else rather than who, because you cannot change yourself in terms of take yourself out of the equation, right? But you can ask what else. And the what else will require that you change your mindset. The what else will require that you do an analysis, what we call a root cause analysis, where you not just address the surface issues, you address the repeated mistakes or the cycles or the root cause that prevented the success. So you do a root cause analysis. And to do a root cause analysis, you use a technique that I call the 5 whys to drill down to the core of the problem, to identify the patterns that are not working, to identify the blind spots in your actions and in your thinking. You ask why. Why did this thing not work? When you get the answer, then you ask the answer why. Why didn't that work? Then you ask that answer why again until you get to the 5th why before you know the root cause. And then when you find the root cause, what do? You ask yourself, what can I do differently? What aren't I doing now that I need to start doing? What did I do before that I need to stop doing? What did I do that worked up to a certain state that I can bring in and apply? And this reveals a growth mindset where you are able to analyze, where you are able to identify what has failed and create a new strategy or adapt or adopt a new approach to what you're doing. This helps you develop greater resilience, and long-term success. Another thing that you've got to do is to reframe. You have to reframe the mistakes and the failure as an opportunity to learn. Because life is about progress. Life is about learning. Life is about growth. Life is not just about actions taken. Life is not just about doing. Life is about learning. Life is about progress. Life is about growth. Life is not just about arriving at the destination. Life is about embracing the process and the journey. And if you see life from that stoic perspective, that it gives you an opportunity to learn, to progress and grow, which is a fundamental component of life, then you will view mistakes and failures not as negative, not as limiting, but as a positive opportunity that unlocks your creativity and your potential. And you can always ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What wisdom can I elicit from this experience? What skills can I develop from it? What strengths can I extract from it? What new insights can I gain? And this is how you need to approach it. Now, you have to also understand that you need to develop what I call psychological insight. You cannot just see everything from a physical perspective, from a handiwork perspective. You've got to ask yourself, do I have any psychological insight to this? How am I using this to develop, my mind? And that is done when you are able to experience something negative that is painful. And we're not denying that it will not be painful. It will be painful, but you are able to convert that pain into motivation. And every time you do it, you are gaining psychological insight. Every time you do that, you are reframing, you are reprogramming your thoughts and your emotional and belief system. Because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So what are you doing? You are reprogramming the entirety of your existence and your being. And you need to be able to journal all of these things, extract all the specific lessons you've learned, and how you've pivoted and the value, so that sometime in the future, you can go back and read it and see that, yes, I made this mistake, but I pivoted. And when I pivoted, I saw an opportunity, I created another set of strategies, and we achieved it. And if you keep journaling and if you keep documenting, right, you would have the evidence of transitioning from negative to positive, right? Of transitioning from mistakes and failures into opportunities to learn, to grow, and to succeed. I yield the mic.
Wow, that was such a loaded answer. I've got so many notes on that answer. And they really apply in so many different contexts. So thank you for really setting very clear guidance on how we can practically use tools, resources, to move and shift out of regret. I love that power of reframing part. That story about Thomas Edison and the way he reframed that whole burning thing. That's really key. And this brings me to my maybe final question, looking at the time. And it's to speak about one category of people that we haven't mentioned just yet. We've talked about the individuals, we've talked about leaders, and we've talked about the workplace. I want to bring this into the context of parenting and children. And this might be a selfish plug here, because I think I need guidance on how to deal with certain areas of parenting, particularly, you know, if you're parenting an adolescent, a teenager, you know, they're in that very awkward stage, very annoying stage where they think they know it all, but at the same time, they don't know it. And then when things go wrong, you know, they are the group of people that just catastrophize things. They make things feel like it's the end of the world. And how do we as parents or as individuals who have caring responsibilities for younger children, how as parents can we utilize these tools? I mean, asking a 13-year-old 5 whys, I can imagine all the eye rolling that they would give you, all the head shaking that they would give you. How can we translate these tools in a bite-sized, digestible way for this group of human beings that really need this, actually? Because when you think about much of the issues we have as adults, it often stems from our childhood. It stems from the way we didn't have the right beliefs or the right narratives, to your point earlier on, TC, about, you know, our belief systems shape our world. So what would you say? How do we make this practical for the Gen Zs and the Gen As of this world, please?
You know, I love this question. Yeah, I think we have moved away from our African roots. We're being acculturized into the Western ways of doing things. And we had honestly very powerful interventions and protocols and systems as Africans. We have stopped telling stories. We have stopped telling our stories. We have stopped sharing our experiences. We have stopped being real. We are becoming those things that we post on Instagram, where we want to show the world that everything is fine and hunky-dory. But that's not the reality. So your children at home, they see a disconnect between your reality and the image that you put out. Yes, it's great to be positive and, you know, to want everyone to see that there's a good side to you. But don't bring that home. So it's time for us to go back to being real and to telling our own stories of all our mistakes and to let them connect emotionally with us, especially with our traumas, with our pain, and with our shame, because they can really feel that. Because emotion has no age, pain has no age, trauma has no age. So you've got to use those opportunities or those tools to teach them the consequences of some of the actions that they take. And when they make those mistakes and they feel the pain from your own stories and they make those same mistakes, you reinforce that learning and you continue to inspire them to grow and to progress. You let them, you let them acknowledge and accept the mistakes and the pain, no denial. And then you sit with them and say, now that you have failed, after, you know, I had this conversation with you, what have you learned from it? You know, we don't want our children to feel pain, and we are creating weak entities. Pain strengthens you. Trauma strengthens you. Yeah. So we have to go back to our first estate where, you know, we become the stories. And we tell the stories of our friends, our siblings, our parents, and we tell our failed stories. Gone are the days that we do that. We always want them to know that, you know, we were first in school. Really, were you? You were not first in school. You were not even 10th. You were not even 50th. You know? So we have to be real. We have stopped being real. We have to mentor them. We have to coach them. We have to document these lessons. You know, they need to know. They need to know that, man, this is how mommy overcame. This is what mommy did. This is how mommy suffered before mommy became MD. You know? So, and then once you've done that, you now begin to put systems in place and structures in place such that, you know, they understand systems. They understand structures. They understand, you know, processes. And they understand that life is a journey. They are 14. They are 17, not 25. So they cannot want what a 25 should have. You know, but we are also spoiling them by giving them what they shouldn't have, because they have become trophies that we want to use to compete with our friends and use to show that we have attained to a certain social status. So our parents told us you can't have it, and we didn't die. They have to learn to delay gratification. At a certain age, you can't do certain things. You have to put those systems and those processes in place. Because success and maintaining success is about discipline. It's about self-denial. It's about prudence. It's about accountability. It's about routines that you adhere to. So we have to put these systems in place, that accountability systems, checklist systems, denial systems, and you give them milestones. Say, when you get to this age, you can do this. And but all my friends are doing it. Okay, go and live in their house then. And move out and go and stay there. Let them adopt you. Let them pay your school fees for as long as you live in this house. This is the system. But you must, this is where we get it wrong. You must adhere by those rules too. So if we are saying no phone time after 8 p.m., then switch your phone off and go and keep it somewhere. Or no phone at dinner. Say, I'm your mother. No. You also need to be accountable. You know, because it is all, you know, it's this Japanese concept called Kaizen. It is all these small things, small, consistent improvements that lead to remarkable results over time. So what are those little habits that you are getting them to learn? And what are those little foxes that you're allowing to foster? Because what is happening is, you know, you're installing programs that will keep running in their lives. And so you need to check yourself and ask yourself, you know, what am I doing wrong? And what are the things that I need to stop doing? What are the things that I'm not doing that I need to start doing? And what are the things that are working that I need to continue doing? I yield the mic.
Wow, thank you very much, TC. That's loaded. When you're talking about me putting off my phone at the time, like, oh my God, these children. When I'm collecting their iPads at a certain time, do I need to switch off my phone? Okay, I've heard you, sir. So we are going to take the final question for the night, and it's coming from someone in the chat room. So she says, realizing that one may have made a mistake by marrying the wrong person, which can be a deeply distressing and complex situation. What steps can one take to remedy the mistake?
Very, very deep question, man. You know, there are three options. You leave, you stay, and you live with it. Or you stay, and you make that person the right person with a lot of hard work. Those are the three options available to you. But the first thing you have to do is make a decision. You have to decide what you want. You know, am I staying? And if you're staying, you can say to yourself, I'm going to give myself this amount of time. And you give, you tell who you're married to that I'm staying and I'm willing for us to work on it. If it doesn't work, in 6 months, I'm gone. Or you decide, I'm going to, Mrs. X or Mr. Y is my identity. So I'm going to stay here and take it. But you have to recognize that being married does not get you into heaven. Being married, it's not your identity. It's not your identity. You were who you were before you married. Your name is not what you are. Your name is not your identity. Your name is just a label so that people can reference you and people can refer to you and say, okay, ID. If I say ID now, they know who I'm talking about, but that's not who ID is. Yeah, it's not everybody that calls ID that knows ID. They just know you by your name. That is, they can recognize you by your name. So if they recognize you by saying Mrs. X, it's not who you are. They don't know who you are as a mother. They don't know who you are as a CEO. They don't know who you are as a sister. They don't know who you are as a daughter. They don't know who you are as a mother. They don't know who you are as a wife. They don't know your habits. They don't know your temperaments. They don't know your life story. They don't know you. They just are able to refer to you and point to you and say, okay, ID is that lady. Doesn't mean that they know you. Neither does Mrs. X or Mr. Y define who you are. So first thing is for you to understand that being married or not being married does not define you. It's not the passport that will get you to make heaven. No, it's not. Right? So once you settle that, then you can make the right decision and say, you know what, nah. There's some mistakes that cannot be corrected. You just have to exit. You understand what I'm saying? If by chance you bought a ticket to go to Tokyo, and there's a 10 p.m. flight at the airport, and you get to the airport early, you check in to your Tokyo flight, and your luggage is going to your Tokyo flight, but by a stroke of mistake, you go and line up where they are going to Toronto, not Tokyo, Toronto, because it's Tokyo and Toronto. It sounds the same. So you go and line up at the boarding place. If they say, oh, no, this is a mistake, do you now say, no, let me go. No, you go back and go and board where Tokyo is boarding. And there are some mistakes that they are colossal. If you get onto that flight, your luggage is going somewhere else, you are going somewhere else. And you may not meet the meeting that you're going for or whatever the purpose that you're going for. So there are certain mistakes that you have to correct yourself and get out of it. There are certain mistakes that you can correct them on your own. There are certain mistakes that you can't correct them on your own. You have to work with a third party, because that mistake is not about only you. It's got many parties involved, all the parties involved. And you have to set it as a goal, and everybody has to buy into it. and everybody has to be mutually accountable to each other to achieve that goal. And everybody has to know that there's a timeline and a time frame or a deadline that is attached to, you know, correcting that mistake. And at the end of it, if we achieve it, all well and good for us. If we don't achieve it, we shake hands and say, thank you, well done, and then we go our separate ways. I yield the mic.
Very brilliant answer, really. Very brilliant answer, because that one is not 100% in your control. So it has to be two people that decide. Yeah, we would have loved to go on, but yeah, I guess we have to release you because I know you have another 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. So thank you very much. So that's the end of our questions, and yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much, ID. How can people find you? Banke, how can people find and follow you? If you could just share that with us before we wrap up and before I say my last word. So ID, how can people find you? How can people follow you?
Okay, yeah, the best place you can find me is in the office of the Catalyst. So I'm in the office of the Catalyst. Then on social media, Coach IDEE Peter on Instagram, Idon is a Peter on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ID. And Banke, how can people find you and follow you?
Yeah, just to echo ID and say thank you so much, sir, for the time today, your wisdom as always. I can be found on 2 platforms primarily. LinkedIn is my professional platform. So Banke Shotomi, I go by my name on LinkedIn. On Instagram is where you get the opportunity if you are a woman who wants to be mega, which stands for a woman who's magnetic, easeful, graceful, and aligned. You can join me on Instagram at Mega Woman Community. And I'll be happy to welcome you and engage with you on either of those platforms as well.
Thank you very much, ID. Thank you very much, Banke. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning into this conversation. Honestly, guys, by embracing mistakes and failures as, you know, one of the first attempts in learning to attempts and progress and growing, we transform setbacks into powerful stepping stones for our success. And what matters is not the failure itself, but how you respond. How you bounce back from setbacks and how that helps you grow into the person that you are born to be. On that note, we'll call it a wrap for tonight. We spoke about mindfulness and how to stay calm, how to build emotional resilience, you know, in difficult times. You know, one of the most profound tools of developing that kind of mindset is meditation. If you have not joined us in the meditation, affirmation, prayer, and visualization 3.0 program, you can still join. Reach out to ID. Every morning, you heard us say we meditate for an hour, and then all day we're dieting, and all over the 70 days challenge, we're exercising. Today we did the grounding and the earthing. You know, exercise. This week, we're on a vegan diet to help us develop emotional and mental resilience. When you are able to say no, you are training yourself to be disciplined. You say no to meat, you say no to fish, and you stick through that program. When you are able to set an alarm and wake up every day for 70 days at 4 a.m., right, and meditate for an hour and go and exercise after that, and ensure that all day that you follow a certain diet and all the additional programs that will throw your way, you are already programming yourself and setting yourself up to build the resilience that you need to be able to bounce back from setbacks. And if this is what you really, really want in your life, the ability to develop emotional, mental, spiritual resilience, and the ability to bounce back from all kinds of setbacks, then make sure that you click, you know, the link that is above ID, Banke and I, and register for MAP 70 days. It's not too late. Today is day 10. Today is Day 10, we've got 60 more days to go. On that note, we'll call it a wrap for tonight. And, you know, I can go watch the rest of Arsenal's match with Tottenham just to unwind. As they said, I've been at it since 4 a.m. I need to now unwind. So I'm going to take another maybe 30 minutes, you know, to just unwind and then get ready to go sleep. Thank you very much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you guys on Sunday on the same platform, the Be Transformed Tribe on Clubhouse. At the count of 5, I'm going to shut down the room. 5, 4, 3, 2. Love you guys. Bye-bye.